There are moments in the life where you feel that something bigger than you is operating in the shadows, protecting yourself in ways that your rational mind cannot explain. Perhaps you have experienced that strange feeling of being guided away from decisions that seemed correct, or you have felt an inexplicable calm in the midst of the most devastating storms of your existence. If you have ever wondered if there is a superior force watching over you, but you don't know how to recognize your signals, this video is for you. Carl Jung, the psychologist who revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche, understood these experiences better than anyone. For him, they were not coincidences or illusions, but direct manifestations of what the self called, that deepest instance of our being that has a wisdom that transcends conscious understanding. In the next few minutes, we will explore the 5 clearest signals that you are being protected by a superior force, and how Jung teaches us to recognize and trust this invisible guide that has always been working in our favor. Have you ever had that strange feeling that something invisible interfered in an important decision in the last second? It was not your rational mind that changed my mind. It was something deeper, a force that seemed to whisper, "No, not now, not so." Carl Jung would call this a demonstration of the self, that deepest instance of the psyche that has a wisdom that transcends the conscious understanding of the ego. When you feel this subtle intervention, you are not imagining things. You are experiencing the work of a superior intelligence that operates from the depths of your unconscious. Jung understood that self is not simply a part of us, but the entire psychic being, including aspects that we have not yet consciously integrated. This protective force acts as an internal browser that can see patterns and consequences that our limited ego cannot perceive. When an opportunity that seemed golden brown mysteriously fades, or when you feel an inexplicable resistance to something that should be good for you, it is yourself communicating through what Jung called the transcendent function, that ability of the psyche of joining opposites and revealing a third wisest path. These interventions do not always make immediate sense, and there lies their power. Your ego wants explanations, wants control, wants to understand every movement. But superior protection operates from an archetypal level where symbols and synchronicities speak an older language than logic. When years later you discover that this lost opportunity was actually a disguised trap, or that the internal no saved you from a destructive path, you begin to develop what Jung called a conscious relationship with the unconscious. The truth that few dare to say is this: the more tune in these subtle interventions, the more protected you will be. It is not magic, it is deep psychology. It is your total psyche working in your favor, using information that your conscious mind still cannot process. Learning to trust these signs is not to surrender to destiny, but consciously collaborate with the deepest wisdom of your own being. In the darkest moments of your life, when everything falls apart and you feel that you cannot more, something extraordinary arises. A calm that does not come from you. It is not that you have found a solution or that the pain has disappeared. It is something different, more subtle and more powerful. Carl Jung recognized this experience as a direct manifestation of what he called the compensatory self, that psychic function that emerges precisely when the ego is on the verge of collapse to restore internal balance. This calm is neither mental nor autopunded. It is vibrational, enveloping, as if an invisible presence reminds you that you can breathe, that you can resist one more moment. Jung understood that in the moments of extreme crisis, when our usual defenses fail, a space opens so that deepest forces of the psyche emerge. It is what he described as enantiodromia, that psychological law where the extremes are transformed into their opposites, where deeper despair can become the portal towards an inexplicable serenity. What you experience at that time is not resignation or denial. It is something much deeper. It is your soul remembering its essential nature, its ability to remain centered even when everyone external staggers. Jung knew that this calm arises from direct contact with what he called the archetype of the interior sage, that figure that lives in the depths of the collective unconscious, and that we carry the wisdom of all human crises that have been crossed before yours. Over time, you learn to recognize this calm as an unequivocal protection signal. It is not that the problems disappear, but something in you remains untouchable, like an eye of the hurricane in the middle of the storm. This experience teaches you a fundamental truth that Jung constantly repeated: you are not alone in your suffering. There is a compassionate intelligence operating from the depths of your being, holding you even when you cannot sustain yourself. Synchronicities are not coincidences, they are the language of the soul talking directly. Carl Jung revolutionized our understanding of these phenomena by proposing that there is a principle of a causal connection that operates in the universe, where external events reflect internal states significantly. When you begin to notice that certain phrases are repeated, that specific numbers appear constantly, or what songs come at the exact moment you need to hear their lyrics, you are not going crazy. You are waking up what Jung called the psychological reality of the collective unconscious. These external signs function as mirrors of your internal process of individuation. Jung understood that when we are in crucial transformation moments, the psyche becomes more permeable to significant connections with the outside world. It is as if the universe itself became a great awake dream, where each symbol, each casual encounter, each unexpected message is part of a narrative that your unconscious is weaving to guide you towards your totality. The most extraordinary thing about these signals is their emotional precision. They are not generic or vague. They arrive with an accuracy that directly touches the core of what you are living. Jung explained this through his concept of activated archetypes. When you are going through an important psychological initiation, certain universal patterns are activated in your unconscious and begin to magnetize external experiences that resonate with that specific archetypal energy. Learning to read these signs is like developing a second language, the language of the soul. It is not about looking for them desperately or forcing interpretations, but about cultivating what Jung called floating attention, that ability to remain receptive without being obsessive. When you develop this ability, you discover that you live in a much more communicative and compassionate universe than you never imagined, where superior protection manifests itself through an infinite network of significant connections. Your instinct is not an emotion. It is the voice of yourself talking from the depths of body wisdom. Carl Jung understood that the body carries an intelligence that transcends the rational mind, a wisdom that has been developed through millions of years of evolution and that can detect patterns and dangers that consciousness cannot yet process. When you feel that visceral sensation that tells you this is not right or this is your path, you are accessing what Jung called the intuitive function of the unconscious, that ability to perceive hidden possibilities and meanings. This instinct operates from a silent and observer place that Jung identified as the center of the self. It is not reactive or emotional. It is a silent certainty that arises from the entire being. When you learn to distinguish between the anxiety of the ego and the wisdom of instinct, you discover that you have a more precise internal navigation system than any external GPS. Your body becomes a resonance detector that can feel when something is aligned with your individuation process and when it is diverting you from your authentic path. Jung observed that people who had developed a conscious relationship with their instinct seemed to move around life with a special grace, as if they were guided by superior intelligence. It is not that they did not make mistakes, but that their mistakes were part of a larger pattern of learning and growth. When you trust that deep sensation that gently drives you towards certain directions or stops you firmly before others, you are consciously collaborating with the wisdom of your psychic totality. The protection you experience through instinct is not magical. It is deeply psychological. It is yourself using all the information available, conscious and unconscious, personal and collective, to guide you towards experiences that serve your process of becoming who you really are. When you honor this internal compass, you discover that life becomes less a fight against current and more a conscious dance with the forces that have always been working in your favor. The ability to keep your heart open after being deeply injured is not naivety. It is the clearest sign that you are being sustained by a superior force. Carl Jung understood that the heart that remains sensitive in a world that tends to harden souls is connected to what he called the archetype of the eternal child, that part of the psyche that preserves the ability of astonishment, confidence, and unconditional love regardless of how many times it has been betrayed. Jung observed that truly individual people did not become cynical or bitter, but developed what he called compassionate wisdom, the ability to see suffering without identifying themselves completely with him, of feeling deeply without getting lost in pain. When your heart remains open after devastating disappointments, you are demonstrating that something in you remembers a deeper truth than pain, that you were made for light, for connection, for love. This sustained opening does not mean that you have not learned discernment. It means that you have learned to distinguish between protecting your heart and closing it. Jung understood that the closed heart is a dead heart, unable to receive the blessings that life is constantly offering. When you keep your ability to feel, to trust, to open again, you are allowing the healing function of the self to operate through you, transforming each wound into wisdom and each loss in expanded compassion. The superior force that protects you does not build walls around your heart. It gives you the memory of your soul. It reminds you again and again that the wounds were part of the process of awakening, not the end of your story. Jung knew that the human soul has an extraordinary regeneration capacity when it remains connected to its deepest source. Your open heart is the living proof that something sacred lives in you, something that no external experience can destroy, because it is the very essence of who you are. What you just discovered are not abstract concepts, but deep psychological realities that Carl Jung dedicated his life to studying and validating. Each of these 5 signs, subtle interventions, the inexplicable calm, significant synchronicities, instinct as a compass, and the heart that remains open, are manifestations of your self working tirelessly to guide you towards your individuation process, towards becoming who you really are. The question I want to ask you now is this: which of these signs resonates more deeply with you? Have you experienced those mysterious interventions that saved you from wrong roads? Or perhaps that supernatural calm in times of crisis? Share your experience in comments. Your story not only matters, but it can be the light that another search engine needs to recognize your own superior protection. If this content has touched something deep in you, if you feel that you belong to that tribe of souls that seek truths beyond the superficial, subscribe to this channel and activate notifications. This is a sacred space for deep thinkers, for those who are tired of pretending that life is only what is seen on the surface. Here we explore the mysteries of the human psyche with Jung's wisdom as our guide. Remember, you are not crazy to feel these things. You are not alone in your search, and you are definitely not unprotected. Your soul knows the way, and the superior force that guides you has never abandoned you. Until next time, and never forget that your awakening is necessary for this world.